I'm just trying to understand that. Is it your position, since you're asking taxpayers for another $500 billion for the war, that American families should be forced to give up child care and health coverage so that you can have $1.5 trillion for this budget?
Senator, that's not my department. I certainly support this, and I also support the president's efforts to find and remove fraud wherever possible.
The Secretary of Defense was just asked a direct question. Should American families lose their health care? Should they lose their child care to fund a $1.5 trillion defense budget? His answer, that's not my department. Not, no, families will be protected. Not, we've run the trade-off analysis and here's what we found. Not even, that's a fair question and here's how we're thinking about it. That's not my department. A man requesting $1.5 trillion in taxpayer money, sitting before the Senate, being asked by the people's representatives exactly what this money costs the people paying it. 6 words. That's not my department. Hold on to that answer, because every exchange that follows in this hearing exists to explain exactly what those 6 words mean, and who pays the price when the Secretary of Defense doesn't consider the American family his department.
I'm not talking about fraud. I actually asked whether an American family should lose their health care or their child care to pay for this budget. That is literally what the president suggested.
Let's establish what was happening in that room. Hegseth had just redirected the answer to fraud, to waste, to the president's broader effort to clean up government spending, a clean pivot away from the question that was actually asked. Murray stopped it cold. I'm not talking about fraud, because the question was never about fraud. The question was about a number. $1.5 trillion. And what has to disappear when that number has to come from somewhere? And here is what matters most about that exchange. The framing wasn't Murray's. The president had already answered the question himself. His own words on the record. We're fighting wars. We cannot take care of daycare. Not a paraphrase, not an interpretation, a direct quote from the man who proposed this budget. So when the Secretary of Defense sits before this committee and says, that's not my department, he is declining to defend a position his own president already stated in public. The position is in the record. The quote is in the record. The only thing missing in that hearing room was an answer. Murray was about to make that unmistakable.
The president has proposed a historic $1.5 trillion budget that will defend the nation and confront threats like Iran, which previous presidents allowed to happen, as Senator Graham pointed out. Previous administrations said they wanted to take care of this problem, and they did not, and he's doing it.
Read that response carefully. Murray asked, should families lose health care and childcare for this budget? Hegseth answered, previous presidents didn't confront Iran. That is not an answer to that question. Not even close. It is a sentence shaped like a defense that defends nothing. It moves the entire frame from domestic cost to foreign threat, from what Americans lose to what previous administrations failed to do. Previous presidents, previous failures, previous inaction. Watch the pattern. The question is about cost. The answer is about threat. The question is about trade-offs. The answer is about enemies. The question is about the family losing Medicaid. The answer is about Iran. Every time, without exception, the frame moves. A $1.5 trillion defense budget is not justified by pointing at a previous president. That is a statement about the past. The committee was asking about the present, about the 2026 budget, about the families who will fund it and the programs that will be cut to make room for it. He's doing it. Fine. At what price? To whom? That is the question. That has always been the question. And at this point in the hearing, it has still not received an answer. Not, here is what families will not lose. Not, here is how we protect both defense readiness and domestic investment. Not, here is the specific trade-off analysis we ran before submitting this number. Just, previous presidents failed. He is succeeding. That is the evasion, word by word. And Senator Murray was not finished.
Don't tell me
Let
we
me-
don't care about families.
Mr.
We sure do.
Mr.
And we
Secretary-
take care of them in every way we possibly can.
I'm asking you about taxpayer dollars that everybody has. So when we've been to war before, we have asked people to do victory gardens. We've asked them to pay more. You are not doing that. You are asking for $1.5 trillion, which means something else has to be given up. That is what this committee is looking at.
There it is. Don't tell me we don't care about families. That was the answer when Murray pressed on the budget's real-world impact on American households. And then Murray did something the deflection could not survive. She went to history, victory gardens, war bonds, shared sacrifice. Every major American military mobilization in modern history came with a direct ask to the American people. Here is what this effort costs. Here is what we need from you. Here is the shared burden. That is not what this budget does. This budget does not ask defence contractors to absorb a sacrifice. It does not ask the shareholders who profit most from military spending to give something back. It does not ask the people at the top of the procurement chain to contribute. It asks the family relying on Medicaid. It asks the parent who needs subsidised childcare to get to work. It asks the person who loses what disappears when $1.5 trillion has to come from somewhere. You're not doing that. 3 words. And they create a binary that no amount of "we care about families" can dissolve. Either the burden is shared, as it was in every previous American military mobilization in modern history, or the most vulnerable carry it alone, while the contracts flow to the people who needed no help to begin with. Hegseth said he cares about families. The budget is a public document. The numbers in it are a matter of record. And Murray was about to show exactly what those numbers say.
You want to increase the war budget for the next year by $500 billion. That is taxpayer money that could be used to feed families or build new affordable homes or wipe out some diseases completely or increase child investments 20 times over. But you are asking us to blow it all on war, and that's not even counting the money that you have spent bombing Iran or that you may still request in a separate supplemental.
Stop. $500 billion, not the total budget, the increase. The year-over-year addition being requested in this hearing from these taxpayers right now. Feed families, build affordable homes, eliminate diseases, multiply investments in children by a factor of 20. Murray was not speaking in abstractions. She was translating a single budget line into human consequences, into the specific things $500 billion can do, and the specific things that no longer happen when it goes somewhere else instead. And then she said something that cannot get buried in the back half of that clip. That's not even counting the money you have already spent bombing Iran. Already spent, past tense, before this hearing, before this committee vote, before any of this deliberation. Money was already allocated and deployed. And a separate supplemental request, an additional ask, on top of this $1.5 trillion may still be coming. So the number being debated in that hearing room is not the ceiling. It may not be within range of the ceiling, because the spending has already started and the full ask has not yet been made. That is not a partisan interpretation. That is what the public record shows. The kind of math that does not require a security clearance. The kind that only requires someone willing to say the number out loud and ask what it means for the people who will pay it. Murray said the number out loud, and then she brought in someone else to explain exactly what it means.
I know you do not care what I have to say, so let me quote you someone you might actually listen to, President Eisenhower. He said, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children." That is what this budget proposal is asking. It's going to leave Americans cold and hungry to fund Trump's war and make defense contractors a fortune.
The man who presided over the largest military establishment in American history, and who, at the end of his presidency, understood something about it that this budget does not reflect. Every dollar spent on a weapon is a dollar taken from a person who needed something else. Murray did not import that argument from a political opponent. She did not construct it herself. She quoted the founding voice of the modern American defense establishment, the man whose credentials on military spending no one in that room could challenge. And his position was this: there is a cost, a real human cost. It has a name. It must be justified. Not assumed, not buried, named. The sweat of laborers, the genius of scientists, the hopes of children. Those are not rhetorical flourishes. Those are the actual trade-off. Every dollar that flows to a contract that was not scrutinized, to a weapons system that was not evaluated, to a budget number that, by the record of this hearing, appears to have been decided before the strategy was written, is a dollar that came from a real person, from a family that will not receive the health care they needed, from a parent who loses the child care that allowed them to work, from a child whose future investment was passed over. Eisenhower understood that. He built his career defending this country and still understood that. The question that left that hearing room unanswered is whether the people currently making these decisions understand it too.
So that is why I hope this committee throws that in the trash and comes together with a budget that works for all American families. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Will anyone require a response to the question that was asked, deflected, redirected, and then buried under a quote about Iran and a reference to what previous presidents failed to do? Or does it get absorbed, filed, moved past, rolled into the next procedural vote, while the people asking the question get tired and the people evading it get the appropriation they requested? Because that is the pattern. Ask, deflect, ask again, deflect louder, invoke a threat, point at a predecessor, wait for the room to move on. That's not my department. Previous presidents allowed this to happen. Don't tell me we don't care about families. None of those are answers. They were delivered with confidence. They were delivered without hesitation. But they are not answers to the question of what a family loses when $1.5 trillion has to come from somewhere, and a supplemental may still be coming after that. Eisenhower answered it decades ago, with his entire military career as the credential. The family that loses Medicaid did not choose to be the trade-off in a defense budget. The parent who loses childcare did not volunteer to absorb the cost. The child whose investment gets passed over did not get a vote on the number. They are the answer to the question that never got an answer in that hearing room. That answer is in the budget. It is a public document. It will be voted on. And the only thing that changes whether those numbers get examined honestly is whether enough people refuse to let "that's not my department" be the final word. Share this. Talk about it. Keep asking. Like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.